This is Glambition Radio, episode number 281, Creative and Critical Thinking with Julie Bogart.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and founder of The Trust, the modern premier network for 7- and 8-figure women leaders. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are creating the new models for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And hey, we're doing it with style. So let's go. I am still on a high from our trip to Florida. I kicked it off with our member meeting in Miami Beach for, of course, The Trust. We had so many incredible women there. We had our guest speaker, Carolyn Aronson, founder and CEO of It's a 10 Hair Care. You know that blue bottle? It's in like every store in America now and around the world. Her story was wild. And I love when they share stuff that they don't share anywhere else, because I tell them, listen, closed doors. This is only shared with members. What do you really want everyone to know? And they're like, oh, ooh, and they get very excited about it. And man, she shared some stuff. It was awesome. It was awesome. We had such a great time. And then my kids came down and met me. We went down to the Keys for a week. I got a little R&R. I mean, as much as you can when you're a mom and you're there with the kids. And now we're back in Scottsdale and already planning some incredible events coming right up. We have one coming up again in May here in the Phoenix area. So listen, ladies, if you've been thinking about this, if you've been thinking, this group sounds really, really cool, this group of multi-million-dollar women business owners, we're getting close to 50 members now. We are representing all types of industries, so much diversity, such incredible conversations in the room. Aren't you craving something different? Join thetrust.org. We would love to talk with you. Let's see if it's a fit for you. There's no pressure. We just love talking with qualified women who would like to learn more. Happy to share more with you, give you all the dates of upcoming meetings. You can decide if this is a fit for everything you've wanted for the rest of 2022 and beyond. I have a feeling it just may be. So come have a look. Now, today we're going to mix it up a little bit. I did a fantastic Instagram Live with this woman you're about to get to know, Julie Bogart. If you don't know her already, she is author of the brand new book, Raising Critical Thinkers. I've come to love her stuff. I got to know her through her book, The Brave Learner. She does a whole program called The Brave Writer, which I have used with my children here at home. And she's just a rock star. And I love the perspective that she brings from many different places, her work with tens of thousands of families, how she places the importance on writing and thinking for all of us, not just kids in the homeschool communities. And this ended up being such a fantastic conversation. You'll hear I didn't want to let her get off of Instagram. I kept it going. I said, I'm going to put this, with your permission, on my podcast as well. She's like, that would be fantastic. So check out her new book. Is called Raising Critical Thinkers. It's out now. And this is going to be a great conversation on creative and critical thinking. And remember, I have a few seats left at my workshop. It's coming up in just a few weeks. It's my Creative Strategy Workshop. Go to creativestrategyworkshop.us. This is an intimate workshop here in Phoenix. Just a few dozen entrepreneurs are going to be in the room working with me personally Wednesday and Thursday, April 6th and 7th here in Phoenix. It's a creative immersion for leaders and entrepreneurs to flip your thinking, have you be able to look at challenges or opportunities from multiple perspectives instantly. You are going to be operating so differently when you leave that room after 2 days. I've done this only once before, back in 2018. People raved about it. We've freshened it up for a whole new era and the age of everything we're going through right now. It's going to be so much fun also. So go to creativestrategyworkshop.us. I hope to see you there. And now get ready for a fantastic conversation with Julie Bogart. First of all,
I want to tell you a little bit about how this conversation came to be, and then I'm going to bring on Julie. And even if you are, I think especially if you're not familiar with her, you're going to be really enjoying the conversation today. So let me back up and give a little backstory. And actually, first, I'm going to give just a quick shout out to those of you who are coming to my Creative Strategy Workshop, creativestrategyworkshop.us. That's coming up on April 6th and 7th here in Phoenix. Go check it out. We do have the registration page live if you'd like to get all the details. It's going to tie into what we're talking about today, and I'm so excited for the piece that Julie's going to bring. So Julie is the author of a new book that I'm so excited about. I'm bringing this with me in my reading to Florida, Raising Critical Thinkers. When I heard this title, I had to hold back screaming, oh my God, yes, thank you. This is what we need right now, because I don't even have to tell you why, right? Do I need to tell you why? I don't think I need to tell you why. But when I saw she was coming out with this book, because I'd already had her on my show on Glambition Radio, if you want to go back and hear that interview from a few months ago, it was fantastic. And I said, let's do something around this book. Let's have you on an Instagram Live and talk about this topic, because this is affecting everything. It's affecting on so many levels, right? There's us personally and what we're taking in and what's going on in the world. There's a level beyond that I do see women, especially in their business models, getting very myopic. We're going to talk about that today. That myopic view is what really affects things we don't even realize. And then beyond that, this is affecting the world. It's affecting the environment our children are growing up with. It's affecting how people think or are taught not to think. This is going to be a great conversation we're going to have right now. And actually, I'll let Julie tell you a bit more about herself so I don't ramble on. So I'm going to bring her on right now. If I can go back and find, I think I saw you pop up, hun. There you are. I think she's, okay, here we go.
Hey, Allie, what a great introduction. Hi.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying. And, I'm using a filter today. No apologies. I'm sorry. It's
You look beautiful. I know. I was like, wow, her background is bright. She's got tan skin. You look great.
Yeah, I don't know. If any of you have a suggestion for a filter that doesn't look filtery, I just want, what I like is the Zoom touch up. Like
Me
Zoom
too.
does a perfect, yeah. Can someone invent or point us women to the light Zoom touch up? I don't want plastic surgery looking. I don't want to look like even this. I'm like, oh, I don't know. But anyway, here we are. I digress.
Here we are.
Yeah, it's so great to see you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. I love the ideas that you want to talk about today. I feel like they're right up my alley, and even a slight pivot from what I usually get to talk about. So let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, so I first learned of you through a past client of mine. She's become a friend I really look up to when I want homeschooling advice. Her name's Jenny Fenig. Forgot to even tell her we're doing this. So Jenny, hi, if you're watch it later. And started following you, for the information for the kids mostly in the beginning. And that's when I discovered Brave Learner, Brave Writer, just everything that you did. And as I dug into it, when you first get into this homeschool world, you're just diving into everything. I mean, I don't care what perspective they had or whatever, I'm just, putting it all together. And then we pieced together our own kind of plan. But I kept coming back to you because I'm like, this woman also makes sense. And she has like a really good, I felt, bird's eye view of things, and how you brought that to education for me. It really stood out to me. And then when I learned more about your book coming up, I'm like, we have to have this conversation because my big thing right now is creativity for business owners, because I think they're getting too myopic. And I'll hold up the book again just to show this is Julie's new book coming out, Raising Critical Thinkers. And excited to dive into this. You want to tell a little bit about your backstory for the people watching this who may not be familiar with you and your work?
Yeah. So I'm a mother of 5 kids. They're all grown now. I have a granddaughter and 2 more grandkids on the way. My kids live all over the world, including places like Thailand and Mexico. They're gainfully employed. They have relationships. Like it all worked out. Sometimes think if you're homeschooling, you just want to know, okay, it's possible and it can turn out well. But I started my company in January of 2000, and my company is called Brave Writer. My goal at the time was to help parents become effective writing coaches that help their kids not just write accurately, but to have access to their own real thoughts, self-expression that was rooted in the integrity of who these kids actually are. And so I built this little kitchen table business. The biggest investment I made when I started was to move from dial-up to cable connection. And I remember debating the merits.
Do you remember that?
We justify the expense.
Yeah.
And today it's
$100 a month,
years.
the big
Yeah, right. Exactly. And now it's 22 years later, and we have 50 employees, and we've served families in 191 countries. And we have multiple hundreds of publications. We've been doing this work, teaching classes online. And I share that because I know your audience. Someone asked me on a podcast, an entrepreneur this morning, what is the key idea that you would want an entrepreneur to know that helps them go from kitchen table to actually having a successful business? And it's so germane to the topic of my book. And it's this: it's having insight. It's having insight. It's not slick photos. It's not a better website design. It's actually speaking to the transformational quality that you bring to whatever industry you're in. It's not being better than people. It's actually having their attention. You say something that calls them out of their habits of thought. If you can do that in your industry, you are much more likely to develop a following. If all you're doing is having a better price or having better quality or having better offerings, that is like everybody else. That is the key strategy. So when you said creativity and critical thinking, for me, those intersect at insight.
Yeah, so exciting. So a book's not a small project. What made this topic, especially for you, the critical thinking, timely, important, kind of really part of the impact you wanted to leave?
Yeah, interestingly, this is the first book I wanted to write. But when I met with my agent, she really convinced me to start with The Brave Learner, which was the exact right decision. But the reason I say that is I've been thinking about these ideas for nearly 30 years, like from the dawn of the internet. And that really is where it started for me. Before the internet, I, like all of us, had in-person relationships. And those in-person relationships, I was a mom with small children. We'd have park days. We'd go to church. We'd do activities together. And even if we disagreed on things, there was sort of a forced politeness, right? Like we knew that there were certain topics not to push on, or if we shared something, we were careful in how we expressed it. There was sort of a quality of respectfulness, maybe not always depth, but there was certainly a respect that we didn't want to injure each other's feelings or trespass on a sacredly held belief. So when the internet opened, homeschooling mothers, I always say they were the first ones through the doors. We were lonely. We were isolated. We wanted support from each other. And we got online, and initially in the spaces I was in, these were heterosexual, mostly married, stay-at-home moms, similar religious and political persuasion. So I thought there'd be a lot of overlap and agreement. And in a lot of ways, there was. But it was startling to discover that we could get pretty hostile over things like paper versus cloth diapers, or whether or not OxyClean actually cleans and is good for the environment, or
this was in the group, right? This was online.
These were in these discussion boards online, right? And then we would get in these email lists where we're discussing curricula, and you would think that we were dealing with like the nuclear codes, right? Like the level of commitment to being right was so strong. When you add in religion and politics, suddenly the gloves were off. People were calling each other names. It was like before we even knew the word trolling, we were trolling each other, right? Like there was just this, and it fascinated me. It also troubled me. I felt immediately attacked and defensive and all the things, I'd wake up in the morning still thinking about the post last night and keyboard warrioring and telling my kids they can watch TV because I've got to answer this.
If I had moved the comma, would they have understood it differently? Do you ever do that to yourself?
Yes. All of those things. And then also like, wait a minute, we were just chatting and joking last week. Why is she attacking me now over, something like what age my child gets baptized? Like it was startling to me. So I became fascinated with what forms our loyalty to our thoughts. And that's really the genesis of critical thinking. Why am I so loyal to my habit of thinking, to the beliefs that I hold dear? And that led me into grad school. It led me down a long rabbit trail of research. And the bottom line is this: most of our loyalty is to our people. And if our people hold strong beliefs, we attach strongly to those beliefs. It's very difficult for us to think our way independently of a group we deeply value.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does this relate to children and raising this next generation? When you look at the last few years, especially of what they've been aware of or not aware of, I think, thank God, my kids just are a bit not aware of what's going on, but when they get into this world of being not only, I wrote about this when I was writing some copy for my workshop coming up and saying, it's been so eye-opening as a parent to see children not only be taught the right answer, of course, that's how we were all schooled, right? That we need the right answer.
Right.
But now there's only one right way to get the answer.
That's right.
And I think that's when I started going like, well, wait, how are they going to be able to see this from different perspectives? And this is a math problem, right? I mean, extrapolate on this as you will, but like this was a math problem. And I'm like, I don't like the way this is going. This is something's off here, right? So tell me about, for children especially, what are some things you share in the book? What are some things that you feel are things that we could be doing right now in conversations with our kids? And then feel free to talk about the business aspect too, but I really want to talk about
I want to talk
is the
about
kids right now. And that's what the book is about.
It is. That's the core of the book. So let's just begin with the idea that a parent is raising a child. And usually parents move right into what I call Parental Indoctrination Program 101. From the time that
keep going. Born, I just got to shut the door. Okay. Keep going.
No problem.
I can hear you.
From the time that your kids are born, you have a vision of what it means to civilize this child, to get this child into the right belief system. Let me give you an example. You'll have a 5-year-old. You're calling that child to dinner. And you say to the child, before you sit down for dinner, I need you to wash your hands. And your child will say back to you, I don't want to wash my hands. I hate washing my hands. Most parents at that moment move into a power over dynamic. They go into indoctrination. So what they say is, honey, you have to wash your hands. There are these invisible things we call germs. They attach to your hands. When you eat your food, it goes in your body, and those germs will make you sick. That is not critical thinking. What that is there's an adult who has the authority, and the child has to discard all the inputs that are shaping how they think just to receive the propaganda or even the facts from the adult. But let's just deconstruct this for a moment. What if you said to your child, why don't you like washing your hands? What is it about hand washing that bothers you? Is it the temperature of the water? Let's do an experiment. Let's wash your hands and keep changing the temperature, and I'll use a thermometer to measure it, and we'll figure out which temperature you like. Oh, you don't even like the water. Well, let me think. I really do think washing hands is important, but maybe we could use hand sanitizer. Do you know what that is? Let's talk about that. It dries really fast. Or I could use a baby wipe. But then let's just take this one step further. How many times have your kids actually eaten a meal or eaten food without washing their hands? Like hundreds, thousands. And do they get sick every time? They do not. So what if you just roll the dice and you say, you know what? I'm curious to see if you do get sick tomorrow. If you don't wash your hands, let's find out. There is this tendency that we all have that says, I have to tell my child what is good, right, and true, and they need to take my word for it, rather than allowing our kids to collect their own data, to have some experiences, to evaluate why they think or feel the way they do. Critical thinking starts with caring about the source of a person's commitment or belief, not just assuming that the job is to overturn it or poke a hole in the theory.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can I add? I need to add a funny story about the hand washing, because it's just
please do.
And I've never had a platform to share it, and it's just perfect. So when COVID first hit, the 2 years ago, when we were like, oh my God, just everyone was going nuts. And I was like, you kids got to wash your hands. Like every time you come in, right? We had the little routine. They come in. And after, it was probably like a week later, I was like, and I just had the feeling that they weren't doing it or something. So I'm like, let me smell your hands, because I want to smell the soap, right? And then Jordan came up and I'm like, George, did you wash them? Yeah. I'm like, with soap? He goes, Mom, that bathroom's been out of soap for 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, it was just such a mom moment. I'm like, of how much you can't control and be aware of everything in the whole time. And they were fine. And, it's just so funny. So anyway, that led to a great discussion, though, about how they need to help watch it. But anyway, I had to share that for the moms. I hope you got a laugh. I'm done. That's just really
100%. Because really what you're admitting there is that so often when we come to our children with a command or with a rule or with a belief, What we're asking them to do is to exchange their own perceptions in favor of the family doctrine, right? The family logic story, the story we tell ourselves is the truth. And when we do that, we're actually short-circuiting the opportunity of the child to learn what it feels like to entertain multiple ideas, to experiment with them, to explore them, to collect data. Now, obviously, sometimes you just have to tie the shoes and head to Target, and you don't have time to deeply investigate.
It depends how much time I have. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Get your damn shoes on.
That's right. Get your shoes on. We're not going to discuss shoelace tying. We are leaving.
Right.
However, could you do it once every 2 weeks? Could you occasionally just really take seriously a child's resistance or vision? You know, you might have a child who says, I think I should be able to play video games all night long. And instead of just saying, well, you'd be tired in the morning and drawing the conclusion for them, could we follow that fantasy for a moment? What would you get out of playing all night that you don't get during the day? Why is the night a better time to play? What level do you think you'd get to? How would you keep yourself awake? What would you do about using the bathroom and eating food? Oh, so you want the quiet of the house. You don't want to compete with your brother. Your favorite gamers are on in the middle of the night because they're in Korea. I'm starting to see where this is going. All right, well, here, let's just try it one night and see what happens. Like, I'm not saying that you need to abandon the policies of your family, but occasionally, couldn't you start to invest in your child's worldview a little bit, start to trust that it's meaningful to them and see where it leads so that they can start to have the sense that dissent is valued in your family. The healthiest communities value dissent. And we think of dissent as like political views, but I'm saying dissent is, I don't want to wash my hands. I do think I should be able to play this game. I don't understand the point of homework, right? Those are the kinds of dissents we can value early with our children.
Yeah. I just made a little synapse connection in the brain, another level, which usually happens when I'm listening to you. But, with the business and then this, what you're doing.
Yes.
So everything you just said really ties into us taking the time to have conversations with our children, which I have to share was revolutionary for me, having the time to do that now with homeschooling, even while running the business. And I don't want to, I'm not going to fake when I talk about homeschooling. I want people to know, like, we have help. Okay. I'm not like hiding the fact that we have some help. Here we have a great girl we found who's taken time off college. She comes in and does some academics.
Nice.
But I want to do the part I can't that no one else can do. And that's these conversations with the kids. And so having more of that time has been, I really value that just so much more because the questions that come up, how we have the time to talk through things. Like you said, there are those mornings you're like, put the iPad away, get your shoes on, and then there's other ones where we're able to have a really interesting conversation on things and the world. And so the connection I made beyond that was what I've noticed now in person, especially with the entrepreneurs that I work with, is there's no substitute for that but in person. Like, because the conversations that are happening behind the closed doors, when I say, listen, I'm not recording this, like we're going to have just an actual honest God meeting, like we're all getting together. And the conversations that happen are extraordinary. So I just kind of wanted to connect that for everybody. And it's interesting that, everything you just shared is really taking that time to dialogue with the kids versus I think a lot of us grew up in, well, it sounds like you had like a great, my childhood wasn't, my mom's probably watching. My childhood was fine, Mom. It's fine. But that generation, a lot of it was that authoritative parenting.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I remember having nice chats, but like now it's so different. It's so magical. It's the magical part of it. I think for both my family and the clients I work with is these conversations. And
to not be afraid of where the conversation goes. There was a time in my life when I was quite ideologically driven and very afraid to think outside the frame of reference I'd been told was the absolute truth. There was a moment, the internet, I blame it for everything, exposed me to this diversity of thought around these ideas that were troubling to me. And I felt like I really needed to chase it down. But I discovered in my own family, my marriage at the time, that it was seen as threatening. And so this is an example of knowing that you are not in a community that is safe for dissent. I waited until the middle of the night one time after my husband was asleep. I got up, snuck down the stairs, came into this very office. My computer used to be over here. And I got on my computer. I locked the door and I got on my computer and I was going to go to this one website that I had been told I should never go to. And I broke out in a head to toe sweat. My arms were shaking. I could barely type because I was so nervous. I had to calm myself down, finally got to the website, started reading, and within minutes found it fascinating, found some things that made a lot of sense, some things that really confused me and I didn't like. And I just sat in the middle of the night with my own reactions to this information that I had been told was too dangerous to even read. Can you imagine that there's something you're not allowed to read and you're a full-grown adult? But when I was done, the fear that someone would find out that I had been to that website was so powerful, I cleared my entire history on my browser so that if I died in the night, my husband would not find out in the morning.
Was this like a news site or something that shared different points of view on things?
It was religion. It was around religion. And honestly, I did not want to be known for having been to that site as a last act before I might die in the middle of the night. Now, yes, honestly, this is an extreme example. But when you are in communities where you know that to voice what you really are thinking or a question you have is not welcome, you're not in a healthy community. We run a homeschooling membership site. And anyone is allowed to do any kind of educational choice in that space, even though it was originally created for homeschoolers. And we welcome people who even say things to me like, I tried this product you designed and it's not working for my child. We take them seriously. Oh, I want to learn what's not working for you. I want to imagine alternatives. I want to be aware of our limited view that did not meet your needs. I think what we usually do is we double down and we blame the person with dissent. Well, you haven't read the right things. If you just knew my sources of authority, you would agree with me about this political issue. We can't trust your source of authority because they're terrible people. That does not take the fullness of the person into account, and it doesn't create connection. When we prioritize being right, we actually eliminate the capacity for intimacy. Intimacy is the result, the fruit of actually valuing a person as they are, not as you need them to be in order to like them. And anyone who's married knows this because people change over the decades. And literally, if you are only married because you have all the same ideas, you'll be in a divorce at some point because one person is going to grow away from those initial ideas. So part of what I'm arguing for here with your children and your communities is the right to change your mind, to think differently, to ask taboo questions, and to still be held, loved, and known.
What things do you recommend in the book for parents to start doing? You know, the questioning was a great example, or turning a directive into a conversation.
Yeah, one of the practices is in The Brave Learner, and I recap it in Raising Critical Thinkers because it's so easy to implement. Basically, it's this. Get a stack of Post-it notes, and for a week, any question your child asks, child or teen, write it on a Post-it note and stick it on your sliding glass door or a whiteboard, whatever you have in the kitchen area where kids always are. And just don't answer the question. Now, these questions can be anything. It can be things like, what is a black hole? But it can also be, why did mom give Billy the blue toothbrush when she knew I wanted it, right? Like it can be any kind of question. And when your child asks the question, say, ooh, it's a really good one. I'm going to jot it down and stick it on this wall. And we'll talk about it on Sunday over dinner, right? Like just put some distance between the question being asked and discussing it. You might at breakfast even glance up at the wall and just read some of those questions to your kids. These are great. You can give a pen to your kids who know how to write. They can just start adding their own questions. And then finally, on that Sunday night over dinner, start peeling them down, bring the iPad or the laptop to the table and discuss them. Get a whole mix of answers. Don't just give the definitive answer and show them how to value the question. You'll be amazed if you don't answer them, they will keep thinking about them. And that's what leads to good thinking. It's ruminating, not just deciding really quickly the way social media or a test require us to.
Right. Because it's tricky sometimes too, because you could look it up in 2 seconds, right? But I like them percolating on it. I like the little wheel turning in the brain. And actually, it's interesting. I was just writing about this as well. So I'm so excited to talk to you. What time are you good to talk a few more minutes longer?
Yeah.
What time?
Yeah.
What time do you have? Okay.
No, I've got plenty of time. No rush.
Because I'm not nearly done with you. This is great. Where do you live, by the way? I forget.
Cincinnati, Ohio.
You ever get down to Arizona and West Coast?
I do. All my family lives, my extended family all lives in California. And actually, I might be in Arizona later this year. We can talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, let's connect in person. Yay.
Yes.
To get a photo. So what has become very so apparent as well, like the last, I'd say since, even so more so the last 10 years versus when the internet first came out, is that we are consuming more than we create. We are taking in information more than we think. And as creators, right? Which then cuts us off from source. And that's a whole other conversation as well. But when it comes down to like finding, and I won't take credit for that. I read that somewhere and I forget the guy, but thank you wherever that came from. But it's so damn true. And it's why we're, I think, losing a lot of these creative skills. And I think that's been the problem. I'll talk about the business circles for a minute. I will have clients come in my door, even at the 7-8 figures, but who are locked into a specific model that they learned because they were taught that this is what works, right? And it may work for a while. And then, you know what? If it's working, work it. But you got to be ready. There's going to be a day you wake up and it doesn't work. Something's not working. And maybe something you depended on now is not dependable. And the market shifting, or people want something different, and ad algorithms blow up or whatever. And it's interesting to see the ones that are ready to adapt, and they're like, all right, let's map this out and go a different direction. And the ones who are like, that there's no deviation from that, and they try to make it work, or they'll search for the information. And I tell them, this next level of thinking for you, I tell them, this, where you step really into leading, is where you stop consuming and you start now creating. So stop the intake of information all the time, right? Like when you know what your strategy is, that's great. Go learn the best of the best and from the best. But you're shutting off a whole other power center where you could totally generate a brand new business, like brand new ideas, like the stuff that pops for people if you just get them thinking in this different manner. And I have exercises I do with them, and they're like, first they're irritated. They're like, what is this? And then later they're like, oh my God, you just flipped my thinking upside down. Like they leave like something popped, And do you see that as well with tell me, actually, let's talk about the links between creative thinking and critical thinking from your perspective.
Oh my gosh. No, I love this question, because one of the key changes in my own company, Brave Writer, which is about writing, was when I decided to take up drawing, learning to draw accurately and representationally. Betty Edwards has a book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, and a follow-up called Drawing on the Artist Within. And I started doing her activities, and they changed how I saw everything in my life. For instance, she explains that when we go to draw a face, we're so familiar with what a face looks like that most people make the eyes really big and the forehead really small. And we typically put the eyes way up high on the head because that's where we spend all our time looking. And then when we draw this face, we can't figure out what's wrong with it. Why does it not look like what was in my head? What she recommends is when we're learning to draw, we take the image and we flip it upside down so that our brain can't jump to conclusions about what we see. And instead, we are invited to ponder relationships. That line is, a half an inch from the side of the page. It curves down and it's related to this other line that curves up. And I was stunned when I was first learning to do this kind of drawing, the way my brain completely flipped. And I would get into a state of flow, like lose track of time, be completely curious about all these line relationships. What I discovered through drawing, away from work, away from teaching, away from parenting, was that how I see is a habit. And I have to take a deliberate action to interrupt what I expect to see in order to see anything new. And so I've done most of her activities. Drawing on the Artist Within is responsible for shaping some of the content in this book and one of our most popular classes in Brave Writer, because I suddenly saw this apply across the board. So I'll give you an example. You're looking at a social issue. You have a habit of thought, a habit of relating to this social issue based on your background, your life, your experiences, or lack thereof. One of the ways to eject yourself from that habit is to actually close your eyes and, using the questions I ask in my book, file through the image selection that you associate with that social issue, and then ask yourself other questions. So the first one is, what do I see? The second one is, who's not in the picture? Who am I not representing when I talk about this? What socioeconomics am I seeing? Are there other socioeconomics that are represented that I keep forgetting to include? You start going down this path of actually tapping in to the way you see and unearthing what you automatically exclude all the time. And so, yes, absolutely. I feel like when we're talking about creativity in teaching, parenting, business, whatever avenue, we have to disrupt our habits of thought. That's how we get to something new.
Yeah. Pattern interrupt, right?
Yep.
Just going about it. So I love that. So visually, because I'll take an idea and flip it. And that exercise, though, it's literally a visual flip. And you realize, oh, I'm looking at my face now. You're right. The eyes aren't like up here. They're like,
no, they're literally, if you measure, they're a halfway down. If you go from the top of the hair to the chin, they are literally halfway down. Use a ruler. You'll be shocked. It's true.
Wow.
And honestly, when you even talk about like flipping a thought on its head, one of the practices that I've become really comfortable with now in my own life is when I go to read an article or a post by a friend or whatever, I ask myself before I read it, what do I hope will be true? Because that reveals immediately what my bias is, what I expect, what I want. And the only way to be open to something, and when I say open, I don't mean for agreement. I mean being interested, fascinated, curious about. The only way to have that posture is if you first surface what you are doing to control your panic at reading this thing that's new, and you allow yourself to hold space for this other idea without having to render a thumbs up, thumbs down, or Facebook comment, where you literally, like with the wall of questions, you walk around with it for a little while. You just let it ride sidecar.
Why do we have that visceral reaction almost like our whole body goes, when we know we're going to read something that we disagree with, or when we know that's coming? Like, is that from DNA tribal days, right? We get kicked out for dissenting opinions?
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. There is sort of a community identity that we form around our beliefs, and the loyalty that we experience reciprocates to being close and included and valued. But I will take it just this one step further. Part of it is a leftover habit from school. We've been trained to believe that there is a single right answer, that an authority has it, and if we just declare it, everyone will see it. After all, think of every test you've ever taken. Are there some kids in the class who get a different grade based on having different answers? No. If it's a multiple choice test, there's an answer key, and everybody is regarded or graded based on that same information. To expand to include others, to value dissent, means that I am putting at risk the beautiful vision of life that I think my beliefs give me. And we're always self-protecting. We're thinking, oh no, if I include this other feeling or perspective, the beautiful vision of life I have is at risk. A great question to ask someone in your family that you really strongly disagree with isn't to bring in like typical critical thinking questions like, well, who's your source? And how do you know that's true? And have you double checked that study? Like that goes nowhere.
Check that. Yep.
That goes nowhere. Here's what you can say instead to, your dad who thinks completely different than you politically. Say, I'm curious. What is your vision of America that protects a beautiful life for all of us? Share with me how the views you have create this beautiful vision. It completely shifts the energy of the conversation because now they're going to tell you a story. They're going to reveal their attachments and alignments.
Wow.
They're going to show you who they value. And you're able to say, even back to that person, wow, no wonder you're so attached. I mean, this is a pretty powerful story you're telling. I see why it's valuable to you. Yeah. I actually have my own way of looking at the world that makes me feel like it protects mine. I can see that we both have that in common. We're trying to protect a really wonderful view of the world and start there. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to ever find common ground, ever agree. Some people have such a low tolerance for dissent that you cannot even get near the conversation. But it also means you'll never be intimate. So you can have getting along, eating lunch out with your dad, but you won't feel fully known and vice versa. So if you want intimacy, it matters to include a person in their fullness, not to only require agreement to have a relationship.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we could do like a full day marathon here, but I know you're like squeezing me in between like NPR and like major media. So I so appreciate. I want to plug your book one more time, and then I'm going to wrap up after that. But where would you like people to go to learn more about you, learn more about the book?
Thank you, Allie. Yeah, go to raisingcriticalthinkers.com. Download my free book club guide. It's so that you can read the book and talk about it with your friends. I think we learn these skills best in community, create a space where it's okay to not agree, and actually talk about how these ideas influence you as an adult and how you raise your kids. If you're interested in writing support that comes from sort of this foundational concept that self-expression and original thoughts are important in writing, go to bravewriter.com, and we've got a 7-day writing blitz that you can also download for free that is super fun to do with your kids, whether they're homeschooled or in traditional schooling.
Yeah. And you know what's great? I'm already getting ideas on how to apply some of these exercises, thoughts, things to my community, right? Because some of us lead communities, we run kind of these tribes. And it's been a tricky 2 years for that, by the way.
Yes.
Because you don't know, when people walk in the door, I was like, I remember like the first year, you know, the world started going nuts. I'm like, nobody say anything. Like nobody, just like nobody talk. Business, right? Like
yes.
To business. And then little by little, we started having these really good, once I relaxed a bit, because I think as the leader, I was just terrified, like something would run amok or something. And because I knew we had very, very, very different women in there. And that's what I love. Like I love the diversity of the women in there. Everything from their views to colors, shapes, ages, backgrounds, just everything. And once, you know, it's interesting because some of these things I think will be really great to pop as exercises even,
yes.
You know, when appropriate, when things come up. So, and I may, I'll be giving this a big shout out at my workshop coming up April 6th and 7th. Creative Strategy Workshop. I don't have something to hold for it, so I printed something because I don't have a book. There.
Perfect.
Yeah. Creative Strategy Workshop.us with me. And if you like some of the ideas you talked about today and you run a business and you want to come like pop, flip, you know, disrupt your thinking, go check it out. CreativeStrategyWorkshop.us. We have like no more than 50 women in this room. Guys are invited to this one too, by the way. We're women with this one. And we just do incredible exercises, really flip your thinking. People walked out of their last time a few years ago going like, wow, that shifted me. So check it out. Julie, thank you so much. We'll stay in touch.
We will. Thank you, Allie. Great conversation.
Bye. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get my new shows every week. Also, I'd love if you left us a review so more women like you can discover us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, and other major platforms. And I'd love to hear from you personally. Come join the conversation on social. Instagram is my happy place lately, and that's Allie Brown Official, but you can find links to my other platforms at alliebrown.com. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you tuned in.